This is the international news on Atlantic Television Network. First, the headlines. Africa, interim president Mohamed Idris Deby wins election with 61%. Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu rebuffs President Biden's warning to withhold supplies. India, opposition leaders accuse Prime Minister Narendra's administration. Barcelona.
Every day, our lives are changed by history.
We are one people, all of us.
Leaders, politics.
Nobody's ambition is what they blood.
I have fought a very firmly.
Natural occurrence, war, and the world economy.
I belong to everybody, and I belong to nobody.
ATN.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring on-spot news, live analysis, expert discussions on trending stories in politics, business, socio-economy, sports, and documentaries. So catch all the updates on the happenings around the globe. Stay focused on the fact today, only on ATN.
Now the news in details. Chad's state election body said on Thursday interim president Mohamed Idris Deby has won the May 6th presidential election outright with over 61% of the vote, citing provisional results, even as his main challenger declared himself the winner. Chad's junta has become the first of the coup-hit countries in West and Central Africa to stage a return to constitutional rule via the ballot box, but some opposition parties have cried foul over vote rigging concerns. With tensions running high, large numbers of security forces deployed at major intersections in the capital N'Djamena ahead of the results announcement. National Election Management Agency Chief Ahmed Batichat said Deby had secured 61.3% of the vote, comfortably over the 50% if needed to avoid a runoff. He said Deby's prime minister and top opposition candidate, Success Masra 40, had won 18.53%. Just before the ceremony, Masra claimed victory in a live broadcast on Facebook and called on security forces and his supporters to oppose what he called an attempt to steal the vote. A small number of individuals believe they can make people believe that the election was won by the same system that has been ruling Chad for decades, he said. To all Chadians who voted for change, who voted for me, I say mobilize, do it calmly with a spirit of peace, he said. What happens next is unclear. The disputed results Mujahideen brigades and his family and the family of another group leader, medics, well by hundreds of thousands of Gazans seeking refuge from that have reduced most of the coastal enclave to ruins. In the United States, the White House repeated its hope that Israel would not launch a full operation in Rafah, saying it did not believe that it would advance Israel's aims of defending Hamas. Smashing into Rafah, in President Biden's view, will not advance that objective, so spokesperson just run. It launched its offensive in a response to a cross-border attack by Hamas militants on Israel on October 7, in which they killed about 1,200 people and abducted 252. Some of 126 hostages still remain in Gaza, and 36 have been declared dead, according to the latest Israeli figures. Biden on Wednesday issued his starkest warning. Assembly on Friday set to back a Palestinian bid to become a full UN member by recognizing it as qualified to join and sending the application back to the UN Security Council to reconsider the matter favorably. The Palestinians are reviving their bid to become a full UN member, a move that would effectively recognize a Palestinian state after the United States vetoed it in the 15-member UN Security Council last month. The vote by the 193-member General Assembly on Friday will act as a global survey of the support for the Palestinians. An application to become a full UN member for non-member. The main United Nations aid agency for Palestinians closed its headquarters in East Jerusalem after local Israeli residents set fire to areas at the edge of the sprawling compound, the agency said. Felipe Lazzarini, the head of UNWRA, said in a post on the social media platform X that he had decided to close the compound until proper security was restored. He said Thursday's incident was the second in less than a week. The main United Nations aid agency for Palestinians closed its headquarters in East Jerusalem after local Israeli residents set fire to areas at the edge of the sprawling compound, the agency said. Felipe Lazzarini, the head of UNWRA, said in a post on the social media platform X that he had decided to close the compound until proper security was restored. He said Thursday's incident was the second in less than a week. Israeli police said they had opened an investigation into a brush fire adjacent to the UNRWA compound. Preliminary findings from the police investigation suggest the act was taken by young minors purportedly falling below the statutory age threshold for criminal liability, it said. Since the start of the war with Gaza, Israeli officials have called repeatedly for the agency to be shut down, accusing it of complicity with the Islamist movement Hamas in Gaza, a charge the United Nations strongly rejects. Israel considers all of Jerusalem its indivisible capital, including eastern parts of its captured in the 1967 war, which Palestinians seek as the future capital of an independent state. Lazzarini said staff were present at the time of the incident, but there were no casualties. However, outdoor areas were damaged by the blaze, which was put out by staff after emergency services took time to respond. Lazzarini said groups of Israelis had been staging regular demonstrations outside the UNRWA compound for the past 2 months. Another sound of chanting and singing can be heard. A crowd accompanied by armed men were witnessed outside the compound. Chanting "Burn down the United Nations," Lazzarini said. Israelis are ready to fight with their fingernails, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Thursday in a thinly veiled rebuff to U.S. President Joe Biden's warnings that arms supplies could be withheld over a planned operation in Gaza. Israel's long-threatened move against Rafah, where it says thousands of Hamas fighters and potentially dozens of the hostages they seized in an October 7 attack are ensconced among more than 1 million war-displaced Palestinians, began this week with the evacuation of some civilians, followed by in the absence of what it would deem a credible plan to safeguard non-combatants. Israel has said victory in the 7-month-old conflict is impossible without taking Rafah. The Netanyahu government had kept silent over reports that Washington was holding back a shipment of aerial bombs until on Wednesday, Biden went public with the measure, saying it was part of a U.S. warning to the Israelis. If we must, we shall fight with a spirit, with God's help. Together we shall be victorious. But Netanyahu said in an interview on U.S. television he hopes that he and Biden can overcome their disagreements over the Gaza war. We often had our agreements, but we've had our disagreements. We've been able to overcome them, Netanyahu said on the Dr. Phil show. I hope we can overcome them now, but we will do what we have to do to protect our country, he said. The Conservative Prime Minister's comments in the video statement were members of his war cabinet, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and centrist former Defense Minister Benny Gantz, although no one has said explicitly that a deeper sweep of Rafah would be ordered. I turn to Israel's enemies as well as to our best of friends and say the state of Israel cannot be subdued. Gallant said in a speech, "We will stand strong, we will achieve our goals, we will hit Hamas, we will hit Hezbollah, and we will achieve security." Appreciation for what the Israeli military has described as unprecedented U.S. support and supplies in the war. Israel has a duty in terms of national security and morality to keep fighting in order to return our hostages and end the Hamas threat against southern Israel, he said on it. The United States has been trying to shepherd along Egyptian and Qatari-mediated talks between Israel and Hamas that would free some hostages. Those have stumbled on Hamas's demand for an end to the Gaza war. Israel is willing to enter a ceasefire only. Negotiators on Thursday left the latest meetings in Cairo without a deal, and Israel said it would proceed with its planned Rafah operation. Chief Israeli military spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said in a briefing that the armed forces had sufficient munitions for Rafah and other operations that are planned. China's military closely monitored and drove away USS Halsey that entered the territorial waters of Paraxel Island in the South China Sea on May 10th, the Southern Theater Command of the People's Liberation Army said in a statement on Friday. The U.S. move seriously infringe on China's sovereignty and security, the military said. It is yet another iron proof of its navigation hegemony and militarization of the South China Sea, it said, adding its troops would stay on high alert and safeguard national security. The U.S. Navy said in a statement the destroyer asserted navigational rights and freedoms in the South China Sea near the Paraxel Islands, consistent with international law. The USS Halsey exited the area after its operation and continued on the South China Sea, the statement said. The latest dispute between China and the U.S. came amid heightened tensions in the strategic South China Sea, with the U.S. ally, the Philippines, embroiled in a bitter diplomatic row with Beijing over disputed waters in the region.